Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Tevora Talks. I'm your host, Cash, joined as always by my co-host and partner in cybercrime, Mr. Matt Mosley. And today, we're bringing a very special guest to you live from RSA, Mr. John Fokker, the head of threat intelligence from Trellix. John, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. Great.
So I guess off the top, for our viewers and listeners out there, give a little insight of who is John and how did you get into threat intel and all the good stuff.
So I'm head of threat intelligence. I'm privileged to run a global team of experts that cover the threat landscape day and night, 24/7. And they're based all over the world, from Europe, the US. And it's we cover a lot of the APT work, information state stuff, extensive cyber criminal behavior, ransomware, on the ground, you name it. And we do this for research purposes. So whatever we find, we either enhance in our portfolio, so we improve our XDR and EDR offerings, so we can try to figure out what the bad guys are doing next and how can we improve our products, so we work with those teams. And at the same time, we do some blogging, publish our research, and we have a commercial element. So we sell our threat intelligence services and some products to our customers to make sure that they're ahead of the adversary.
How do you guys stay ahead of the adversary? I guess the threat intel, that's like the biggest.
Yeah, it's no secret. No, we it's a very interesting and dynamic world. So I'm lucky that we have very talented researchers that cover and to track certain threats, and they figure out how we can get the latest IOCs, understand their TTPs and their behavior.
Right.
And at the same time, we have a very strong industry connections. We have essential partnerships that we're forming and all these things just to make sure that we're always ahead of the stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've been doing this a long time, of course, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're deep in the threat market.
Yeah, I've been doing threat intelligence for the majority of my career and the computer career. I've been with Trellix, or the company before, since now for 5 years, doing mostly this and government collaboration projects with law enforcement to do larger takedowns. And before that, I was actually technical supervisor for the Dutch high-tech crime team.
Oh, wow.
So, I live in the Netherlands. I'm a Dutch guy. So, and before that, I was also part of the National Police, but more in organized crime. So it's like the John Gotti's and those things, drug trade. But I was a digital forensics investigator. So I got the phones from all the bad people to look through all their private stuff.
That's good.
Very interesting.
I bet. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. There's some computers and some devices that show a rock star life. So it makes up for all those long hours and stuff. And then before that, I was in the military, Dutch Marine Corps, Special Operations.
Wow, you've been really on the
it's like
light side, the dark side.
Yeah, hunting bad people has been
it's in your genetics.
It's been the majority of the yeah.
Awesome. I know the threat. Our background, of course, beyond the podcast, we do incident response, right?
Oh, great.
Digital forensics. So of course, same side. We're on the same teams, I guess. And threat intel is very important. It's like a critical aspect of everything that we do in cybersecurity. So it's awesome to be able to sit here and chat with you and
great,
all that good stuff. How do you feel has the landscape's obviously shifted over the years? How do you feel it's nowadays, and do you see what's the roadmap that you kind of see for the future?
That's a great question. You see a lot of there's all these shifts going on when you look at, for instance, ransomware.
Yeah.
When I started off with ransomware years back, it was just targeted at consumers. And you would see that these groups are using large botnets and trying to get installs. And it was only the most installs that would help. And that would be the measure for success. And then I believe when SamSam came along, the Iranian-backed ransomware group, they were one of the first ones to go after an organization and to really dive in and to really hold that whole organization in kind of their chokehold and extort them for more money. And that kind of paved the way for everybody else. The adoption of cryptocurrency as a payment method and all that stuff. And that really changed the game from these targeting individuals to going after complete organizations. And that's a big game changer.
Absolutely.
Even with the ransomware amounts. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then now you see, yesterday I did talk about the stuff that we did for Read-Evil. In my opinion, together with Conteam, Lockbit is still on a similar fashion, one of the largest or one of the older hierarchies that had a ransomware as a service. So there you had like distinction between the developers and the affiliates and all that stuff. And now we see a shift almost where there's also groups that spin off and they only focus on data extortion. So they're not even bothered with encrypting. No, they just steal your data. And the more sensitive it is, the better.
Of
And
course.
they hold you accountable. Well, they contact you and they extort you for that money. So that's things we constantly see changing. From the nation state side, there's a very big, well, not a very big shift, but we did see a shift. The most interesting thing for this year was, well, interesting, it's horrible, but at the same time, from an investigative point of view for our work, is we, for the first time, we've witnessed a cyber and kinetic conflict all in one. So, like, if you could talk about cyber warfare, but we saw a nation use its cyber arsenal offensively and then backed up by a kinetic conflict. And that's something that I haven't seen to this scale in my career yet. So that was also very interesting to see a response to that. And at the same time, you see a lot of the APT actors, like the mean time to leverage and vulnerability or to go through a supply chain as an attack. Those are things that are like common business almost, but years back it wasn't that fast.
Right. People talked about it, but it was not.
I don't know if you guys see the same thing and you instant response, but yeah, that's for me, that's like, okay, the pace is picking up. So we have to run a little harder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I mean, on that note, it's kind of interesting because during this conflict that's going on, you actually saw kind of a downtrend in ransomware activity because the people behind it are busy with the war that's going on. You know, it wasn't like a huge downtrend, but you definitely saw it like trend.
That was
downward.
what was really interesting. There was kind of a gap, and it was historically you had from the criminal side what we saw in the underground. It was kind of like not an alliance, but there was a understanding that it used to keep politics out of the door. So you would see Ukraine, Russia, and those countries all work together for a common goal, and that's money. They wanted to like make money in that way, and I mean, the war kind of drove even the criminals to both sides or to an opposite side, and then that obviously had an impact. The Conti leaks were, well, I was a researcher, but still, it really showed. That was the first group that did a public statement that they showed their affiliation with an administration. That was really interesting. It's like, oh, we always have had politics outside of this realm, but it does play a role. It makes you wonder if, like, is there a state involvement or what level is there a relationship?
Yeah,
It's really hard. Like, even analyzing all those chats, and you see a certain relationship, and there's hints of stuff going on. The extent is not really known, but yeah, from other investigations like an Evil Corp, it is very clear that if you're a very successful career cyber criminal in a certain country, that you would stand out. So it's not unheard of that people in the government know what you're doing.
Of course.
But yeah, then obviously there's a lot of sanctions, so everybody was like, okay, what's going on? But it seems like it's splintered off, but now it's back to full steam.
Yeah.
Now it's, I think, they're
Yes.
making up for lost time too.
It feels like, hey, we need to get our song pay in.
It's a great way of
I have
putting
to
it.
go to Sochi. I want to have my yacht. So no, that's it's unfortunately true, but it seems that they're making up for lost time.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, we are definitely living in a historic time, especially
Definitely.
for cyber warfare. But trying to switch it back to kind of threat intelligence, what do you think are some of the challenges that are going to be coming up in the future in the next few years with threat intelligence and just, you know, the evolution of ransomware and how these groups are operating now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's a couple of things that I see within like the space that I'm in, and then also the space that is how it applies to organizations. Historically, you would see that a lot of the most mature organizations are the ones that benefit from threat intelligence momentarily, like how it's structured now.
Yeah,
It's almost like an art, a trade craft. You see a lot of, there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of like ex-government employees. There's a lot of military doctrine reported in it. But it kind of singles out that the only ones that are benefiting from are either the very wealthy, like the very established group of organizations, very mature. And I think as a threat intelligence solutions provider and looking at the landscape, I think the majority of the organizations that could benefit from threat intelligence, if they know it or not, are actually not that mature. For example, if you look at the leak sites from all the organizations that have been extorted and leaked publicly, they're not the big banks. They're not that's the outlier. There's some of them. But those organizations, they have, and you look at the extortion amounts, it's significant. So they have a net revenue, which is really high. And it makes you wonder, it's like, are we as threat intelligence providers penetrating the right people in the market to prevent this from happening? Because ultimately that's our goal. We want to make sure that every customer, as we say, it stays left of boot. So like they want to have the proper intel that they can take countermeasures to avoid them from coming into that situation. And by looking at all those extorted companies, I kind of like scratch my head. It's like, oh, we got a bigger task. Mm-hmm. And I can have all conversations about diamond model and MITRE and all that stuff. But if we are not able as threat intelligence, as a community, to translate the value to the stakeholders that need it most, and not the historic stakeholders that have embraced it, and translate it to a direct business outcome, yeah, it's not gonna push the needle in either direction.
Right.
Because I can spend days in the underground researching all kinds of stuff, and it's great. It's almost like a rabbit hole. It's good from a Russian. Brush it up a little bit. But ultimately, there has to be a business outcome for a company that is like less mature. So how do you translate all that intelligence that you get to an outcome that changes or improves the security posture of an organization? And I think that's a real challenge that we face for every provider.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you translate it to the right stakeholder that it makes sense and that derives an outcome for them?
Well, and then you hope that they take that information and actually
Yes.
act on it.
Well, that too. That's a very good point.
point.
Because there's a lot of intel out there, but there's not a lot of ways to tie it back to your security posture. So that's the next challenge. And it's like, okay, we have all this stuff that scares the living daylights out of me, but what does that mean? What can I do to protect myself, or am I a threat? So that's the thing that within Trellix we take that to heart. That's like, okay, threat intelligence is, we don't want to scare the living. We're not fear mongers. We don't do a lot of marketing around like making people scared. Try to keep it to the facts. I rarely explain people how criminals or threat actors are leveraging their attacks. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we have countermeasures and we can give that to a customer. It's like, okay, but what does it mean? If you're a Trellix customer, what does it mean for you? Are you protected or not? And if not, what can you do to protect yourself better? And that to me is the real challenge. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, how can we close that loop? That is from gathering the intel, translating that all the way to the security posture. And it helps if you have all those sensors, obviously, and all those products, but still, yeah, for all providers, that's something. And then it needs to collaborate or collaborate and work together with different vendors as well. So you have these partnerships and things that we do.
And I think I read you guys have somewhere around 1 billion sensors. Is that correct? Across the world.
Yeah, that's always like up for debate. How many? It's like
Plus or
million,
minus.
two, but not. But yes, we have historically, because we come from the McAfee and the FireEye side,
Right.
so we do have a very, very large sensor array of sensors. That's endpoint, EDR, email, network sensors. What else? There's like multiple products, and all those products they generate telemetry.
Mhm.
And we can leverage that to our benefit to see, like, okay, what do we see in the world? And we can zoom in on a specific country or a specific customer if they're sharing it, or we can see what malicious threats are out there.
That's got to be pretty fascinating. Be able to
It
get
is.
that microscopic and see what's going around.
Yeah,
Because
there's
I mean,
a lot of data being ingested, constantly.
Yeah.
We do a lot of
and I mean, most of our
Right, so-
clients that we work with are in the United States, so that's pretty much the only insight we get is
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got global footprint, so
That's true, and it's like, but don't rule out like instant response stuff. That's frontline intelligence. You're like boots in the ground.
Yeah.
You're in the mud. You're in the trenches. That's what you see. That's what comes to you. And we have a lot of like good partnerships with MDR partners and other works, and we get intelligence from them as well because we value that, because that's what's happening in the real world. We translate that and we try to incorporate it in our stream. But at the same time, I'm a big advocate as well. It's like, as an organization, you need to look at ways to, how do you break that bias? Like, just like what you just said, like, oh, we only look at the US. So what ways can you do to get a global footprint? How can you like broaden your horizon? Because what's happening at your neighbor's doorstep can actually end up happening at your doorstep tomorrow. So if there's anything you can do there, then to better, or if you can do something today to better your position, then let's do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if we just go back to Stuxnet, right? That was years ago, but it was isolated to Iran, and it wasn't until it broke out on accident that Symantec kind of picked it up, and then we all learned about the capabilities. So yeah, it definitely whatever happens to your neighbor, eventually is going to come here. So yeah, it's good to have a kind of a pulse on everyone.
And that's also tricky for a lot of organizations as well, because how do you determine that something is hitting your sector or hitting your vertical?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the report from the vendor or from whoever, and then they say, oh, we've detected it in telco, but that's based on their sensors. So do you have a third party or another vendor or somebody else that could say, like, well, it's also been detected in these sectors? Because, I see a lot of sharing communities, but they're also sharing the stuff that they see and they find important. And by doing so, there's an inherent bias because you focus on the things that you find important.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you try to cover the things that you don't know?
Yeah.
That's an interesting problem that I try to even challenge our team. It's like, okay, how do we find the stuff that we have no knowledge about now? And is that we need to utilize some of our product sensors in a way that we can find stuff, or is it just, are we in the right places to see the right things, or do we need to move to a different area to get a better view on things? Sure.
Now, I know we're kind of running on time, and I know you have a tight schedule as well. So I just want to take the last few minutes and tell us a little bit about Trellix, a little bit more how you guys are disrupting the market, and what maybe the future of Trellix has to hold for everybody out there.
Yeah, we like to say we're the revolution. We're trying to disrupt the market and change the narrative. A lot of times you see, and even here, if you go to RSA, there are so many vendors. And we've been talking a lot to SecOps and SOC professionals. And one of the number one things is that they hate is that there's a variety of solutions, and there's another dashboard and another thing and another screen and everybody else.
We were saying that,
but nothing is working together. So what we're trying to do in our strategy is provide that single pane of glass where we tie things together based on our portfolio. And then we're one of the largest XDR companies, and we have a portfolio that stretches all the way from email to network sensors to sandboxing to endpoint to EDR. And by linking all that stuff together, we're able to provide that story of what goes on in your environment more clearly than others. Because that's also the number two thing is fatigue alert. So there's a lot of alerts and what is important and what not. And if we manage that in a platform style, and threat intelligence is a very large portion in that, we'll offer that to our customers. Yeah, speaking of threat intelligence, we had some major announcements this week. So we're doing a partnership with Intel 471.
Oh,
familiar with that?
Yep, that one.
So we're gonna ingest some of their malware feeds as well. So they have some unique capability on botnet emulation or whatever. So it does showcase if you're a customer of ours, you're not limited to just Trellix stuff. No, we play well with others as well. So that's a partnership, and there's more to come. We have, I'm very humble that I have a team of vulnerability researchers that do zero-day research, and they look at all the vulnerabilities that are dropped on a daily basis. So what we're providing to our customers as well is vulnerability intelligence, what we call. So these researchers look at the stuff that is dropped. They either do additional research or whatever, and they give the advice to the customer. Because what is it, annually? There's 20,000 CVs dropped. How do you prioritize what's important?
absolutely.
So
those are all CVs that get numbers. They're
Yeah.
still.
Oh, totally, yeah. So this team will help an organization say, well, this is what got dropped in the Patch Tuesday drop, or this is what's now in the news. Is it hyped up? Or is it the real deal? Is it important? And another thing that I'm really, really, really proud of is that historically we've been quite silent about our threat intelligence capability. We had a really nice customer base, very government-centric, larger institutions, and we've actually, especially for the services, we've kind of turned our services around and we've made it approachable for even smaller organizations. So when you talk about organizations needing threat intelligence, we took away that barrier. So any customer of ours can tap into the knowledge that we have with our analysts. So basically, you can augment your operation, and you have always a lifeline. That's some of the stuff that we announced this week.
Very cool. We're, for the IR side, we're definitely excited to play with it. Just like what you said, we were walking around the floor. I'm like, oh, this looks exactly like that. No, looks exactly like that. So we're excited to see it all come into one.
Awesome.
And yeah, with that, thank you for your time. We're looking forward to seeing all the great stuff that Trellix has to offer and your team's bringing to us with the threat intel side. And
Cool.
yeah, any final last minute words for our audience out there?
Well, yeah, I hope you guys have some great content, and I'm humble and I'm glad I was part of this. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, John. Thanks
Yeah.
for taking your time.
Cheers.
Cheers to RSA.